Hi, welcome to another episode of PhotoshopLightroomTV. I'm your host, Marek Mularczyk from sitetrain.co.uk and from a very popular blog, PhotoshopLightroomBridge.co.uk. Welcome to another week, another episode of PhotoshopLightroomTV. I've got some more exciting tips, tricks and tutorials for you. If you're looking for tips and tricks, make sure you check my blog, PhotoshopLightroomBridge.co.uk. That's where you find loads of tips and tricks and techniques. I'm posting daily, Monday to Friday. And there's always something interesting about photography or Photoshop or Lightroom or Adobe Bridge as well. Let's start with a tutorial in Lightroom. And in this week's tutorial in Lightroom, I'm going to show you how to do some retouching, cloning on the images using some tools in Lightroom. Lightroom is not designed for doing professional retouching. That's what we do in Photoshop, so we jump from Lightroom into Photoshop. But what if you need to do some tiny retouching within the images, or removing spots, or removing small elements from the images? I'm going to show you how to do these things in Lightroom. So let's jump into Lightroom. Okay, here I am inside of Lightroom. I'm using Lightroom 3, and I'm going to show you how to do some retouching here on this image using Lightroom, not Photoshop. So first I'm going to, I've selected the image that I want to do a bit of retouching here, and I'm going to jump into the develop module by clicking on the develop link in the top right corner of Lightroom interface. That's where you find the tools. Okay, now I'm going to zoom in a bit, so zoom into 100% view. Okay, just so I can see more. I'll press F5 to minimize the top panel and F6 to minimize the bottom panel. Okay, there's a couple of scratches here, but I want to deal with these things here. So here's the tool I'm going to use, the spot removal tool. And spot removal tool has two options here, clone and heal. So it works like a healing brush tool or like a clone brush tool in Photoshop. In this case, I'll start with heal, so I'll start with the healing brush tool and see how it blends the content. Okay, so that's my brush. Now that's a bit too big, so I'm going to make it slightly smaller, and I can use the usual keyboard shortcuts that are found in Photoshop as well, left and right bracket keys to change the size. So I'm making my brush a bit smaller. And here's a couple of things you can do. You can just simply click and release the mouse button, and Lightroom will try to fix it. Okay, looks pretty good. Right, it's showing me the overlay as well. Now if I don't want to see the overlay, what I can do is I can just press H on a keyboard. Okay, let's try again. Let's try here, or just click and release the mouse button. Now if you want to decide what you want to sample from, what you can do is click, hold the mouse button down and drag. As simple as that. Or if you just click, and if you're not happy with the result, you can place your cursor over this circle that's pointing to a dot and drag it to somewhere else. Okay. I'll do the same here, just click here. Usually Lightroom does a really good job and it matches the texture and lighting, so in most cases it will look good. So just press H to hide them all. It looks really good. Let's do this one here. And that one here and here. Now let's see how it deals with this area. Let's try. Let's see what happens. Looks really good. It does look really good. Okay, so that's how you use the healing version of the spot removal tool. You can also change the opacity or left it on 100% and the size. And I use the heal option because I wanted to blend the content with the area around. Okay, this is a quick round trip of removing spots on images in Lightroom. I hope you enjoyed it. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial in Lightroom. I've got another tutorial for you, and this one will be in Photoshop, and I'll be showing you something really interesting. I also have a tip of the week for you as well. Okay. Let's jump into Photoshop, and this time I'm going to show you something. Well, there's a new feature in Photoshop CS5, and I've done some tutorials on that before, called Puppet Warp. If you haven't seen it before, you'll love it. It's absolutely fantastic. So I'm going to use Puppet Warp, and I'll show you how to create animations, how to create an animated GIF using the new Puppet Warp in Photoshop CS5. Let's have a look on it. Let's talk about Puppet Warp in Photoshop and animating the effect with Puppet Warp. I've got this image of the hand here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on the background layer to unlock it. Okay, that's layer 0, and I'll duplicate it at the same time, so I'll just press Ctrl J or Command J on the Mac, get layer 0 copy. Now I'm going to extract the hand from the background. Actually, I'm going to extract it from the original, so I'm just going to undo one step. I'm going to extract the hand from the background. I'll use the quick selection tool to quickly select the hand. This should be quite an easy task. Okay, and I'll put it now on a new layer, Ctrl J on Windows, Command J on the Mac. Okay, so that's the hand on its own. Good. Now I'm going to duplicate this layer once again, and on this layer, let me just hide it for now. I'm going to use the Puppet Warp, Edit, Puppet Warp, and I'll define a number of pins. I'll start, let's see, there'll be one pin here, and let's see, maybe there's a couple more pins here, on the knuckles. Okay, one more here on the wrist, and let's put a few here as well. Okay, now I'm going to reposition the pins. I've had a separate video on Puppet Warp, so I'm not going to talk about it too much, so I'm just going to move the pins. I actually can select multiple pins. And I'll just move the entire hand. Maybe something like that, just to create something interesting, something different from the original. Let's say that's okay, so I'll just accept that. So I've got these two layers here with hand. I'm going to duplicate the original layer once again, and I'll put it on the top. We'll drag it to the top and stack in order. Okay, so I've got 3 hands. Now I will open the animation panel, Window, Animation. Just expand the panel. I'll switch to the frame view, not the timeline view. Okay. And now in the menu in the animation panel, I'll choose Make Frames from Layers. Okay, so I've got 4 different frames, 4 different layers. There's one frame, there's another one, there's another one. Okay, now I'm going to remove this frame here. I'll highlight all 3 frames by holding Shift key and change the timing to, let's say, 0.2 seconds maybe, and I'll play it to test it. Okay. Looks interesting. I'm going to set it to loop forever. I'll play it again. Okay, let's say it's okay. Now let's export it. File, Save for Weapon Devices. Just going to make it bigger. I'll leave the preview as optimized. I'll set the preset to GIF. Oh, the image is really big. Let me just resize that. Let's set it to, let's see, 800 by 600. Okay, let's play it. Good, I'll stop it. So I set it to GIF. I'll leave the number of colors on the maximum, that's fine. And I'll just click on preview here to preview it first. Okay, that's the animation in the web browser. Okay, let me just close that. Back here, I'll just click Save. I'll save it onto my desktop. Puppet Warp, that's fine. Format images only. I'll just click Save. Now I'll navigate to my desktop. That's the animation. I'll just run it in a web browser. Let's use Firefox for that, and that's the animation in the web browser. That's how quickly and easily you can use Puppet Warp in Photoshop to create animations and export them as animated GIFs. Thank you. Welcome back. This was a tutorial in Photoshop. I hope you enjoyed it. We're almost done for this week's episode of Photoshop Lightroom TV, but I've got one more thing for you, tip of the week. This week's tip of the week will be in photography. And I've started talking about it on my blog this week. So if you look on my blog, PhotoshopLightroomTV, you find some posts about depth of field. If you've never heard of it, it's a time in photography. Have a look on my blog, PhotoshopLightroomTV. You find posts about depth of field. And my tip is, if you take a portrait shot, if you take an image of a person, use shallow depth of field to blur the background and to bring focus to the person that you're taking photo of. This brings attention to the person. So if I look on this kind of image, I will focus on the person because the background will be nicely blurred. By simply using shallow depth of field. If you have any camera that allows you to set aperture manually, doesn't have to be an SLR camera, could be a compact. If you can set the aperture manually, you can easily do it. So have a look on the blog to find out more. PhotoshopLightroomBridge.co.uk. And that's all for this week. That's all for this week's episode of Photoshop Lightroom TV. Thank you for watching. I'm Marek Mularczyk from SciTraining.co.uk, one of the UK's leading specialists in Adobe Certified training. And I hope to see you next week on another episode of Photoshop Lightroom TV. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.